So thank you everyone for being here this afternoon for the screening of, now I look better. Thank you everyone for being here this afternoon for the screening of Real Boy. It's amazing to see members of our community coming together for all the same intentions. To create change, to take a positive step forward, and to bring into perspective how important it is to highlight issues and hurdles that individuals of the LGBTIQ plus community will face, and how we as a community can come together and help and support each other. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Nunjual and Gutjimburra people of the Minjabul speaking clans of the Bundjalung Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders past, present and future. I'd also like to thank my elders for allowing me to be here today to share my story, to inspire people and to make a positive change. So if you don't already know, my name is Adrian. I'm 22 years old. I am from the small coastal town of Kingscliff. I'm from the Nuddenjerry tribe, which is located in South Australia. My pronouns are he, him and his, but also they, them and it. I'm part of the youth advisory group here at Tweed Heads, headspace, and also part of the fabulous group of Compass. And I'm very proud to see some of my Compass and YAG friends here today to support me. Thanks. So my coming out story, it's one of those rare ones where it's actually quite positive. Sadly, the reality is that some people face the prejudice and the homophobic and transphobic backlash from their family and friends for being who they are. So my coming out story, I knew at a very young age that I was quite weird, wonderful and wacky compared to my male counterparts. I knew the feelings that I had, even though they were weird and they were very abnormal to me at the time. I knew that it was who I was as a person. I knew that it was natural for me, and I knew that I had to embrace it given how young I was. Also with saying that, I knew that my interests and hobbies were very different to my male counterparts. I didn't care about football, soccer, any masculine thing. I was more attracted to things that were more passive, and that's why I gravitated more towards females, and I was very comfortable with that. And then the biggest hint for me was I was a bit too close to my action man. And that's what made it clear for me. I mean, a lot of boys and even girls, they had an action man in their lives or saw one, but you know, for me, I was like, damn. Throughout my pre-pubescent or pre-adolescent life, I had to go through self-discovery. I had to try and educate myself as a gay man and to accept the fact that my feelings and thoughts and emotions were just who I was as a person. But I was so determined to find a label for it because I was so unsure about myself. So my coming out story, I came out to my mum when I was 12 years old, so that was 10 years ago. I was quite young. We cried in each other's arms and we hugged each other, and she turned around to me and she said, I don't think you needed to tell me that because I already knew. I mean, look how gay you look how you sound. You can't really hide that. I mean, you even sound gay. Or my sister would say, you've got the gay accent, you know, the high-pitched one and all that. My friends, on the other hand, some accepted me, but you lose some, you gain some. So I lost some friends, sadly, but I gained even more better friends. But when it came to school, you're kind of like fresh meat in the lion's den. It's very uncomfortable, and I was forcefully made to come out against my will within my years of high school. I came out in year 7, and I don't regret it. A bully approached me and he asked, "Are you gay or not?" And to a lot of people, that question alone, it's either just yes or no. It's a very simple answer, are you gay or not? But for me saying yes, I was actually quite uncomfortable because at that time I didn't accept myself as a gay man. But I decided to say yes, and throughout the years of my high school life, I went through all the hurdles and hardship that anybody who identifies within the LGBT community had to go through. All the hardship and internal inflictions that I had to go through, self-doubt and anxiety and depression, which is pretty sad. But also with that, I was so worried about other people accepting me that no one actually told me that you had to accept yourself first. And to this day, I still haven't fully accepted myself as a gay man, but I'm proud of who I am. So from all the negativity at school, I would say from the negative, there's always a positive. From the hardship at school, I was able to have that thick skin, that comedic, mediocre personality to kind of ignore all the haters and all the bullying. So before I end my speech, I would also like to give some advice to those who are going through this at the moment. Those who are sadly facing bullying at the moment, just know that it's okay to be your weird, wacky, wonderful self. Do what makes you happy and live your authentic truth. My advice to bullies is be human, have humanity. You don't have to accept and respect me as a gay man, but the least you can do is accept and respect me as a human being. So I hope everyone enjoys the film, and thank you for being here again. And yeah, thank you.
Welcome. What a good looking panel. So this is Tobin Saunders. He's our panel MC, and he is very well known in our community for all the amazing work he's done over the years. He's the Community Health Promotion Officer at ACON, Northern Rivers. He's a professional show-off, a passionate educator, a proud gay man living with HIV. He uses the pronouns he, his, him, or her, she, if in alter ego, Vanessa Wagner. So please let me hand over the microphone control to you, Tobin. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, very much. I'm actually a frock star, not a rock star. First up, it sounds like I always think it's a game show. Our first contestant is Kia Smith. Kia is the president of the youth advisory group at Headspace Tweed Heads, and is a mentor for All Sorts, which is a great new LGBTIQAP group, which has been supported particularly by the Family Centre, Headspace, and ACON has been doing a bit of support too. You're a rock star, you've been fantastic, and your hair looks great. We heard from Adrian. Adrian, thank you very much for your beautiful welcome to country. Really appreciate that. And Adrian is an avid member of the youth advisory group YAG at Headspace Tweed Heads, and he is also on the fabulous Compass group. He's 22 years of old and has a passion to inspire and help young people. He identifies as a gay man and uses the pronouns he, his, and him. Thank you very much. We have Dr. Ashley Van Houten. Ashley is a clinical psychologist and a clinical director of Van Houten and Associates and the Gold Coast Gender Clinic in Surfers Paradise. He identifies as male and uses he, him, his pronouns. He is a member of the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, another acronym, WPATH or WPATH. That sounds good, doesn't it? WPATH sounds a little bit, I don't know. Batman, that's what I was thinking. It's a Friday afternoon, it's been a long day. You're also a member of the Australian and New Zealand Association of Transgender Health, ANZPATH. That sounds like a pathogen, actually. Or an antibiotic, whichever way you look at it. He conducted Australia and New Zealand's first psychological study into the mental health outcomes of transsexuals who are living in their preferred gender, for which he gained a PhD. And it's a question I'll ask you later too, because the terms transgender and transsexual, that may confuse some people. I'd really love to get some insights onto that language and how that plays out in various environments. You've spoken at a number of international and national conferences, as well as lecturing at universities on transsexual health and well-being. You've worked within the LGBTIQAP+ community for 33 years. That's a lot of work you've been doing. Thank you. Yes, a round of applause. Great. We have Ken Bilby. Please stand up, Ken. Hi. Ken favoured a curtsy, which I'm very thrilled about. Thank you. I like a shimmy, actually. Ken is the principal... Thank you! For those of you who didn't know what that was. Apparently quite good too if you cough at the same time if you're having a heart attack. So Facebook tells me. I believe all of it. You are the principal solicitor for the Northern Rivers Community Legal Centre. Ken is a cisgendered gay man and provides free legal advice and casework to members of the LGBTQAP community, plus community, with a particular interest in trans rights. So if ever you have any issues or questions and you need some free legal advice, Ken is the man, and we really appreciate you doing such important work when you could probably quite have easily gone off to a private firm and, I don't know, defended criminals. Oh, no! I think I can defend myself, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Our next panellist is Corey Robson. Hey, Corey. And Brittany O'Neill. Corey is a member of the LGBTIQAP+. I'm going to get quite tired of saying that. But it's good because I've got a slight sinus problem, so I think all that mouth movement's going to move the infection out into the inner ear. I just licked the microphone then, I hope it's clean. Corey is a member of the LGBTIQAP+ community and a member of the Tweeds All Sorts group. He is a trans male who graduated high school last year. Congratulations for that. School wasn't quite so traumatic back in my day. Well, it was in the playground, it wasn't in the exam room. I've lost my spot now. You graduated from high school last year and you are striving to become a carpenter. Now, since Brittany will be up here with you, you don't know if she has her own introduction, but you do. So, Brittany, you going to stand up again? Lovely. You can sit down now. Thank you so much. Brittany is Corey's best friend. We all need a best friend. And has been a big part of Corey's transition, going to his appointments and just being there for him every step of the way. So how beautiful, and thank you. Can't underestimate the importance of allies, friends, family, people you love and trust who are going to be there for you, even if it's not always going to be fun, which is kind of the true test of friendship, is being there through good and bad and all the things in between. Our next panellist is Jade Mirabito. Jade. Hi. I caught Jade unpacking his car earlier in the car park and it was most colourful. That's a funky hatchback you've got. He uses he, him, his pronouns. He headspace LGBTIQAP+ specialist youth worker and proud trans, agender, queer, flabulous, the spelling is intentional, femme creature. We had a bit of an email off. I told him about a word, transtastic, which I think I invented, but I'm not sure if I did. I'd like to think I did. And if I did, how do I copyright that, Ken? Can I just go like that? Sorted, it's mine. I'll rent it out quite cheaply. You are a femme creature as well. You have a background as a high school teacher, a youth worker with QSpace, a service educator, and a phone counsellor. Wow, what haven't you done either? Thank you. Our next panellist is Jessica Caroline. Hi, Jessica. Jessica is the president of Generation Aware, which targets relationship and sexual violence in young people's relationships. Jessica identifies as gender queer. And I think that was the shortest bio. Monica Barnes. Hi, Monica. Monica is a parent educator specialising in the nurtured heart approach, a primary school support teacher and the mother of 4 amazing boys, including Will, who is almost 10 years old and transgender. Oh. Cherie Collins. Hi, Cherie. I never got to say hello before you rocked up earlier. Yes. Thank you. Did you want to do that with a microphone?
Jingy Walla with a Bayang. That's welcome to country in our language. So I'd like to pay respects to our elders past and present and welcome everyone to the land on which we meet. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll yin-yang it over this side now. And Cherie is a proud Aboriginal woman from here, being the Minjimbul, mighty, mighty Tweed mob, you've put in brackets there, of the Bundjalung language nation. You are the sole parent of 3 fantastic young people, a daughter 23, 2 sons 20, the youngest 12 is a brother boy. If people aren't aware of what a brother boy is, we can probably unpack that and talk about that a bit later, but I think we've probably got quite a high knowledge skill set in this room, I do believe. Her youngest son has identified as male from a very young age, standing to pee at 3. Sounds like the beginning of a rhyme, doesn't it? Create a song out of that. It is a big thing. And he told everyone that would listen that he was a boy. For a few years, Cherie listened to extended family that insisted that it was just a phase. He was simply a tomboy. Yeah, right. During these years, he was a sad and lonely little man with beautiful long hair that was kept in braided ponytail that would never wear a dress. That all changed when he fully transitioned at 6.5 years old. Back then, gender dysphoria was classified as GID, or gender identity disorder, and no parent wanted to think of their child having a disorder. There was very limited information around for parents, and that's how Cherie became the South East Queensland parent representative of Gender Help for Parents. So, fantastic. Anyone interested to say anything? Yes. How exciting. I also get some exercise.
Ken, hello. I just wanted to ask a question about the plebiscite. If it's not legally binding and not, going to do anything, how can they legally be allowed to do it?
Great question, and it's about to be decided in the High Court. There's already a challenge being mounted to say it's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources, and not legally binding. The specific powers that allow a plebiscite to happen haven't been enacted. So essentially what the government's trying to do is the lazy way, not actually have a free vote amongst the parliament. They're trying to push it off as a kind of an illegal plebiscite. So I don't think it's valid. The High Court will soon decide whether it is or isn't. Unfortunately, until they make that decision, it's probably going to go ahead unless there's an injunction. So that is an order that stops it in its tracks. There's a lot of advertising already happening, some of it great, some of it hideous. So the only thing I could encourage is if you haven't already enrolled to vote, unfortunately it's too late, but if you are enrolled, vote. Don't do a protest vote, don't stick your head in the sand, and also talk to friends, family and anybody else. Tell them to vote because it's about a personal story. It's not just about some left wing making decisions for our lives.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, look, it's a tough time for us all at the moment, having our lives debated in public about our worth and about our rights to be who we are and to love each other. So look after each other, and I stress, share happy stories. When I went to work this morning, there were some great stories. Our head of HR had sent around to all of staff an email about his daughter, who had sent out a beautiful message on Facebook with a film clip about her father, who is this man at ACON, and that she's been waiting for 10 years to celebrate her father's same-sex wedding. So there are happy stories. There was also some people standing on a highway somewhere down in the southwest of New South Wales. One was a member of the church in their church garb, and the other person had an equality flag, and they said, honk if you agree. It's Freudian slip, wasn't it? Let's watch our language here. Maybe I just need to get a little drink of water in case that doesn't happen again. You didn't have to laugh at that. You could have just pretended it didn't happen. Anyway, they were saying honk if you believe in marriage equality, and lots of people were honking, and it was great. It made Griffith sound like a megalopolis. So yeah, look after yourselves and don't believe the hype, because hopefully it will all be over. I wanted to ask you, Monica, actually, if you've got any ideas about tips for people around resilience, particularly at this time when people are feeling like they're being talked about and not being asked to be a part of the conversation.
Well, I suppose for me, my son's almost 10, so we're pretty lucky that we have a really close and more supportive community, and have had some fabulous specialists to support us, and we just have lots of open conversations in our home and with other parents of the school. I invite them over for cups of tea, and we sit and talk about it and put some facts in place rather than a lot of the fear-mongering that's going on Facebook. My school supported us and had Safe Schools come in, and there's been a lot of really negative things that have been said about that. And so I also encourage all the parents of the school to talk to the teachers about the program, because every teacher at the school thought it was the most fabulous training they've ever done, and not just for my child, but for all of the students there and for them in general. And so I think the best thing is just to encourage everyone to have open discussions about the situation and about your own personal stories, and to make it a very open, inviting environment. And, you know, I don't expect anyone to believe the same thing as I do, or to think that what my decisions that I've made for my son are what they would do, but just to accept that we're on our own journey and doing the best we can with what we have, with the information that we have. And I've done a lot of research and read a lot of medical journals that I've been privileged to from specialists about the coexistence of the autism spectrum disorder and gender dysphoria, which is quite a prominent thing. And, you know, it's hard to know whether one starts before the other, but what we do know from the research is to support anybody in the gender that they prefer to be gives them a positive outlook in life and the best outcome in the long run. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
When you said that,
Put that mic up to your mouth.
when you said that
Pretty
specialists
please.
were actually helpful, what was it that specialists did or said that was helpful for you as a parent?
I think that my opinion was valued, and the fact that I had spent a lot of time researching and gaining knowledge, and so then they were sharing what they were learning and the medical journals, and I found that really helpful for me, because it just helped me to make better choices and not to be so afraid about making those decisions for such a young child as well. And they made a very open environment for my son, who does have trouble communicating, and so, you know, his journey is difficult in that way, and it's hard for specialists to reach him because of that, but it never bothered them, and they just made him feel really welcome. But it was particularly just sharing the information that they were getting, and I just felt that there was I didn't feel like I was beneath anybody. We're very much on an equal platform, and both sides of opinion was valued, and for me that was a massive thing.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes, we do. This is good. I've got a few up my sleeve as well. There's a couple of panel members I'm going to really get some great information out of, I hope.
Hello, everyone. I've got the big doozy. So, and you know, you always ask questions you think you know the answer to, or want to hear other people's opinions of. So I know that most people have a good concept of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and more transgender. Although there's a lot of more discussion around that, but I think the rest of the acronym people get lots of confusion about, and I often have been asked a lot about what intersex is, pan, asexual, all of those things. So it would be nice to maybe get some thoughts about people's ideas around that. Also get a lot of discussion around queer and the use of that, and maybe just to add on the thought about why it's important that the alphabet keeps growing and that we include them all.
Yes, no letter left alone.
I've just volunteered to talk to that. Gosh, I do. I do a lot of training in these topics and talk about the letters quite a lot, and talk specifically about queer to a variety of age groups. So happy to touch on it, and if people want to join in, please do. So I guess talking as a person who identifies with the word queer, I'd like to talk on that specifically, as that's a identity I can actually talk on myself. And I know that the Northern Rivers did a really beautiful little zine called Ideas of Queer, so if you've not seen it yet, you should definitely try and find a copy, because it has all of the ideas of queer that you could find in the little region that it touched on. But basically, I see queer as a bit of an umbrella term, the same way that gay used to be back when gay rights became a thing, and led to what we have now, which is the massive acronym that keeps growing. Queer for me meant a lot of different things because it was belonging. I found the word queer when I started going to university, as queer collectives became like a big thing that would talk about the politics and the rights and socializing and education, and it just was like a hub of information. So for me, queer was access to identity, access to others who valued what they saw in me, and as I would call my shine. Queer was definitely a bit of a safety blanket. I was able to use that language to really roughly identify under, as I've got so many different titles, as Tobin read out a fair few of them. Queer just so neatly wrapped all of those up. But I really love queer because it's not really definable. I know that it's had a lot of negative associations in the past, and that generationally it's not a term that people like to use or like to have heard around them. But I know that for the younger generation it's become a word of empowerment and people rally behind it. And so that's my addition to queer. I also would like to touch on why I believe the acronym should keep growing. Because what we see is within the politics of our community, we hear a lot about lesbian and gay and bisexuals, a little bit, and we're learning a bit about trans, and even though those identities are still very misunderstood among society, the other letters that we don't all know that much about, they're even more misunderstood. Because we don't get to hear about them very often. So I will always advocate for A to be on the end of the acronym or somewhere within the acronym, because asexual, agender and aromantic people really deserve to have their experiences shared amongst the community. And within our community, we often have a lot of backlash internally, like horizontal oppression. And it impacts bisexuals as well as asexuals. So really wanting to make sure that their identities are really seen as part of our community. And it's the same for the other letters that are being added on slowly but surely.
Yes, does anyone else on the panel want to talk to any of the letters in the acronym? I know one that's missing is E for ecosexual. Have you heard of that? Much to the, probably the joy of some of the right in our politics. It's people who like to have a relationship with the earth, whether that be marrying a tree or having sex with water. I know a few ecosexuals, I'm not taking the mickey here, and it's all good, providing it's consensual, although I'm not sure how a tree can consent. Yeah. Well, and for intersex, I guess, Dr. Van Houten, do you feel comfortable talking about intersex? And if not, that's fine. But it is an acronym that ACON, it's part of the acronym that ACON has, and people are like, oh, well, why is intersex there? It's not about gender identity or sexuality. This is something different.
Yeah, look, intersex is there also. Again, it's about gender. And we find, particularly years gone by, that a lot of people who are born intersexed, the decision was made at the time of birth by either the doctor or the parents to actually make the child either male or female. When I actually did my research, I actually came across a lot of transsexual people who had been made male at birth and then as they grew up realized that they were in the wrong body and had to transition. So now the school of thought is if you have an intersex child, let them grow up and let them decide as they grow up what sex they want to be. So I think it's really important that we have these discussions. I also think in terms of the acronym GROWIN, I think that's such a fantastic thing because it shows our openness, it shows our ability to be inclusive, and we are constantly discovering. So I have a smile when I come across the acronym because I'm always waiting for another alphabet, and it just challenges me. And I'm always, you know, yes, I've worked 33 years, but I love a challenge. And it's really great to be challenged as a clinician to learn, to grow, and to learn from my community. Yeah.
And I think the binary, the old school binary that many of us were brought up with is disingenuous. It certainly doesn't reflect the vast complexity and beauty of human expression.
Yes. And, you know, gender is a social construct that changes within societies. So our depiction of masculine and feminine is different in a Western society. I recall when I first went to the island of Sri Lanka, where I was born, and I grew up in Australia, but I met a cousin there, and I said, my God, everyone here is gay, because all the men held their hands in pinkies, and it's very intimate in Australia to see two men holding pinkies like this, talking. But that's how masculinity is celebrated in a country like that. But for me, with my Western perspective, I immediately thought, oh my God, everyone's gay. So it's really good for us to have these conversations in terms of gender, in terms of masculinity, in terms of femininity, and challenge ourselves in that. Because we tend to feel comfortable when we can pigeonhole people, psychologists in particular, and it's really good for us to constantly allow the person to be, as, sorry, what was your name?
Monica.
As Monica said, you know, in her experience with her child, allowing her child to experience and then allowing her to experience and then the two growing within a therapeutic community is just so useful. Without judgment, without being channeled into a certain way, but actually growing within a therapeutic community. And both people, all parties, come into an informed knowledge and consent. So I think it's great that we have these discussions. It's great to have these.
Yeah, look, we've come a long way. I mean, I played with Barbie and a Tonka truck. I know that was a binary, but back in the 60s, that's all we had on offer. Oh, we had a Flatsy doll. Does anyone remember the Flatsy doll? Thank you. I feel like I'm the only person in the world that had one. I wasn't hallucinating.
Tobin, you also talked about the terminology of transgender, transsexual.
Yep.
And that's really an important one because I'm a clinician and I'm also a researcher. And within the research paradigm, transgender is used as an umbrella term under which we have intersexed, genderqueer, gender questioning, transsexuals, transvestic fetishism, drag kings and drag queens, and those are all people who trans the concept of gender. So when I introduce the topic to people, I always talk from that paradigm because that's where I come from. However, I am also respectful that identity in that arena is public, but it's also very personal. So a transsexual might say, look, I prefer to be called transgender, and we should always respect that. Or I would prefer to be called trans. But when I talk about transgender, I'm talking about the umbrella term that embraces all that diversity.
Yep. And look, we all have different pronouns that we feel comfortable being addressed by, and also we are individuals. I mentioned earlier, as did Claire, that I have an alter ego. For me, as a gay man, that was often questioned. Oh, you dress up as a woman. Do you want to be a woman? People were really confused. But Barry Humphries has Dame Edna Everidge, and people are able to really have very clear distinctions there. So part of that, I believe, is a little bit of, I guess, heteronormative patriarchy, possibly. That's one of my kind of interpretations of that. But there is a great deal of confusion. But what's great about, I guess, us now focusing on the individual, person-centred care and getting to know someone, that's probably the most important thing. And you'll see it on forms all the time, male or female, if you're lucky, other. You know, I don't want to be another, and I'm sure a lot of you don't want to be another either. So we need really sensitive and appropriate capture of people's identity and activities and behaviours so we can best help those people with services and support. We get lots of messages about how we should behave, how we should look and what we should do, and we hear lots of medical language around gender dysphoria and all that sort of stuff. Corey, I wanted to ask you, because there's a few discussion points here from the film, where do you think messages about gender came from for you? And how do you think that impacted on how you express yourself now? Or just talk about yourself, if you feel comfy.
Just need another question.
What's that?
Need another question.
You want another question?
To get off, like, to answer it properly.
Okay. So what about, how old were you when you remembered that how you were being culturally told to behave?
Well,
And when you started having a thought that this maybe doesn't feel right for me?
Well, basically when, like, I grew up and I felt, like, normal, and, like, you kind of just don't question your parents because, you know, you're looking up to them as leaders, so, and the rest of society is telling you that, oh, because you're a girl, you've got to dress the part, you've got to be like this, and you just don't really question it at the start. And then it's not till about high school that I got to that I learned more about, like, the LGBT plus community, where you can express yourself more as whoever you want to be. And so I learned more in grade 7 about it, and it wasn't for maybe 3 years ago that I started questioning, because some things, like, I look back on my past, it just made sense that being more, like, masculine was more me. Like, I'd wear, like, once I found out that it's okay, like, girls can wear men's clothing as a general, I was able to, like, just, you know, buy a men's collared shirt. I feel more comfortable. And I've always liked the way suits look, just as me, like, it's a masculine thing. And then I was really sporty, and I always felt more comfortable playing with the rest of the boys. Like, I didn't feel I have to be a bit careful because some girls are a bit more fragile than others. And I get a bit aggressive when I play sport.
Whoops.
But no, it's just, when I started reading upon it, things just made more sense. And it wasn't very obvious to my parents, which I thought it was, but it's each to their own. And we're still going through the transition right now, and it's been going pretty well. Like,
It's a family affair, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, look, one very quick last comment, and then we'll go to the films.
I just want to say to your friend as well, because out of my research, one of the most important things that came out was evidence-based, that social supports is so important in the transition process. And often people from the LGBTIQAP+ community, family have difficulties dealing with the diagnosis in the terms of gender dysphoria. And so not that families don't want to be there, sometimes they can't with the resources they have, either because of their psychological trauma or for whatever reasons. I don't want to necessarily bag parents. Sometimes they just can't be there. But it's so important for people going through the transition to have a support network. So I'm so glad that you've got a friend.
Yay! Yes, we.
I've also got my family, which are becoming more on board, and I've come out to pretty much all my family. So, and they've started calling me Corey. When was it?
Yay!
I think it was last year around my birthday. So that was a big step. They started then, and right now they're trying to use the right pronouns, and I don't really say much against it when they say the wrong one, because they apologize and they correct themselves. So I think that's enough as a trans teen to accept that it's not exactly easy to just change your pronouns, because I have friends and I still get their pronouns a bit mixed up, but as long as you just apologize and give it a go, I think that's enough just to show your support.
Great, yep. Intent, respect.
Yeah. As an attempt.
Thanks, Corey. Thank you to the rest of the panel. I guess, Sherry, I'd really love to have you maybe talk a bit about the support you gave your family and your children and how that was for you. And, oh, Sherry? I'm sorry. I need more sleep.
Sherry.
My apologies. Yeah, Sherry. Yeah, I was right. Just your experiences with your child and whether you came across any challenging experience with other people judging you, asking you inappropriate questions, blah, blah.
Yeah, there's a time that you have to trust your child.
Do you want to just pop that a bit closer to you? That's it, thank you.
You just have to trust in that your child knows what's best for them, and you have to be their champion. And it doesn't come easy. His siblings went through 12 months of therapy. We all did. It was all new to me.
Yep.
And I thought I was quite good with... I work for Family and Community Services. I work with troubled kids all the time.
Yep.
So, again, it's the dual diagnosis situation, because you've got the... autism spectrum, the Asperger's, and I think that gives our kids a chance to just be who they are, because the social sort of stuff that comes around kids, they don't acknowledge it. They're going to be who they're going to be. And it was, a lot of people were like, it's just a phase, I'll grow out of it. The big sister did try and put him in a dress, I've got to say. That was the breaking point. That was, yeah, there's no coming back from that. So that's when we just tossed everything out. Everything went out the window, including the birth name, which he doesn't like. So his original initials were TLC, they're still TLC. Oh. Quite deliberately so. Absolutely loved and adored by his siblings and extended family now, but there are still people that have problems. They'll get over it.
Yeah. So strong family resilience, lots of chatting and...
The main Aboriginal community accept him for who he is. The moment they've seen him, an old aunt saw him running around at Minjimble. He was climbing up some logs and up trees, and she says, "Is that a boy or a girl?" And I go and ask.
It's a good...
Yeah, I'm a boy. Straight out, tell you, I'm a boy.
Yep.
So, and very firm about that from a young age. So no matter how many people try and impose their view of gender on your children, it's much more well-adjusted young people, and thank goodness he won't ever have to undergo top surgery. Hormone blockers are us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not going to be an issue, because that was a big fear, along with getting the bloods. We're not getting the bloods. So that's not going to happen for him. We've gone on YouTube and looked at this and looked at that. He started high school, so we were looking at pecker packers, and you can make your own, by the way, with with a bit of hair gel and a couple of condoms, and yeah, I was told all about that.
How lucky though to have such a supportive mother
Yeah, I felt like the siblings and the
siblings.
yeah, and you know the extended Aboriginal community. He marches for NAIDOC. He participates in all of these things. He was shirts off doing Aboriginal dance when he was a kid, and he's still shirts off every chance he gets. So it's just that they're very firm in who they are.
Yep.
And it's up to us to nurture it.
That's it, but they need people around to support that. Otherwise, that's a really tough journey. Monica, I wanted to ask you a question. That's Monica on the end, isn't it? Or, no, here. I'm so sorry. I've got names all over here. What's that? Yeah. I wanted to talk about bullying and how sometimes I talk to people and talk about the extra bullying that young LGBTIQAP plus people have, and I often get a response from people, oh, we all get bullied. You know, it's all the same. What would be your response to that when people try to make out that it's not a big deal?
No, it's different. I was bullied from primary school just generally. In terms of who I was as a kid, I don't think I was a stereotypical kid that could be bullied. Like, I was really sporty. I was one of the best in my netball team. I was a state level swimmer from primary school. I was really quite extroverted and very social, but bullied a lot. The bullying around sexuality didn't really kick off until high school. And when I first came out, I came out as bisexual. And basically when I came out, I had a girlfriend. And my mum was brilliant. I couldn't have gotten a better reaction. But then sexuality in my mum's side of the family wasn't ever something that fluttered an eyelid. It was very much, oh, hi all, I'm bisexual, and with my great granny still at the table, like she's still alive now, the reaction was basically, oh yes, that's nice dear, pass the butter. And then when I came out again and again and again, it's always been the same kind of reaction. It's never been an issue. At school though, after I hadn't come out completely, really I thought only a few people really knew. Turns out the whole school knew. Or were about to anyway, because I got outed in front of 3 different classes all in one go.
Classy.
In the middle of school. Yeah, I had someone yell at me across, I was standing with like 2 or 3 other people, and they were standing in a big group of everyone else, and they yelled that across, are you effing gay? And I was just like, holy crap, like what do I do now? And a girl who had actually been my bully since primary school, we just happened to be standing together at the time, turned around and called them significantly worse names and said, no, they're bisexual, get it right. And then it just never got really raised again, because I think they were afraid of that person. So it didn't come up for me like that again until I was a bit older, but I left school quite young anyway, so I wasn't at school to get the bullying past when I was 15 really. But I did get it again at one point when I was 17, and someone asked, by then I identified as gay, and someone asked if I had a boyfriend. I said no, I don't have a girlfriend either. And they're like, oh, does your mum know about that? And I was like, yeah, my mum knows, my mum loves me regardless. And they turned around and went, oh yeah, only because they have to though. And I was so mad. I immediately got really angry, and I must have looked like I was about to beat them up because someone else kind of went, no, it's okay. And that was kind of it. But yeah, no, I think it's different to, I don't want to say everyday bullying because bullying shouldn't be an everyday phenomenon, but it kind of is, unfortunately, particularly in the schoolyards. But when you're being bullied about your gender or sexuality, it's about an intrinsic part of your identity.
It's
and
very
it's
personal.
already, yeah, and it's already something that you are finding it difficult to cope with yourself and come to terms with and accept. And you might also be dealing with that from family and friends and just strangers in the street. So copying it in the schoolyard as well just adds more to that, and it's not, you know, that something that changes as you get older. That's something that you are forever aware of in employment, in how you communicate with the services that you're engaged with, including government services that you have to deal with. Like, it's not a choice to go to the doctor all the time. It's not a choice to need Medicare, you know, but particularly with gender, that's something that you have to, or if you're able to, address. So those constant fears, they're always there. They don't stop at school. So
yes, and there's nowhere to turn to often because
No,
there's structural homophobia and transphobia that's
yeah,
you know, covering all of that
yeah.
intimate
So I think
violence
that
that happens
makes
at
it
school.
entirely different.
I wanted to ask Kia a question around, you know, we get bullied at school. We sometimes bully back as a way of protecting. Kia, how was your experience at school? And did any of your classmates or friends pry about your sexuality? Because what I think we can all relate to tonight is that if you're not the norm, whatever that is, it's like we're open to being priced open and asked lots of intimate questions, whether it's about our body parts or about our emotions or about our intimate loves. But for you, did you come across any really hellish shit at school?
Yeah, I got bullied a lot of, well, all of my schooling life for many different reasons. But I guess when I came out as bisexual, like I spoke in my story, that, you know, a lot of people judged me about, you know, you can't make up your mind, or you're just greedy, or you want the best of both worlds kind of thing. And that really upset me because why can't I love more than one person sort of thing? Why do I have to love a certain gender just because that's what I was raised to be told sort of thing? And then it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I heard the word pansexual, and then I was like, what's that? And yeah, one of my friends had told me what it meant, and for me, that's when I sort of changed it all, and I feel a lot more comfortable with pansexual because, you know, it's just about loving a person for who they are, not what's between their legs kind of thing. And that's all I was ever raised to do, is just love somebody for who they are, not, you know, what kind of money they have or what kind of car they have. So why can't it be the same with their genders?
Yeah, people, I guess, intrinsically want some kind of answer that fits a neat binary, which hopefully most of us don't fit in. Thanks for that film. It was really beautiful and incredibly inspiring. And as Claire said, what a brave thing to do. I couldn't bear having a close-up. That you're very photogenic, but I couldn't do that. I also wanted to ask you about your recovery, if you feel comfortable talking about that, because for a lot of people who find themselves cornered by judgmental people or a society that doesn't make us feel welcome, we often turn to things that can help us, which we think are helping us, but maybe aren't. What was the trigger for you to maybe reflect on your drug use and to think, I can get through this?
Like, so what was like my rock bottom kind of point, do you mean? Like, what was my
point? Was it getting to rock bottom, and is that like a social cliche, or is that what happened for you?
Yeah, it's definitely what happened for me, and I believe sort of anybody in kind of drugs or alcohol or any kind of addiction, they definitely need to hit rock bottom for themselves in a way. No one can force somebody to go into recovery. It's definitely a big personal choice. I think just for a very long time in my addiction, I thought that was my life and that's all there was, and that's what my life was destined to be. But definitely, you know, getting in trouble with the law and making a lot of bad choices, you know, waking up in that jail cell and everything like that, it was just, you know, it wasn't who I was. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing with my life. And, you know, I just sort of woke up and I was just like, what do I do? And I rang my mum, and, you know, I'd lied to my parents and everything like that and told them that, you know, I'd only tried drugs when I was younger and that, you know, it wasn't an issue and stuff. And So, you know, I rang my parents and said, I think I need some help. I'm not doing good. And then, yeah, my mum was like, well, when did you start doing drugs again? And I never actually stopped. So, you know, there was a lot of different things in the mix that was happening, not just the crime kind of things. I had done a lot of things that I wasn't proud of and things that I wouldn't normally do. And it just opened my eyes a lot to see what drugs can really turn a person into and everything like that. But now, yeah, being 3 years into my recovery, it's just so much better. And, you know, I thought that I needed drugs to be able to fix my pain. And although I have bad days, I know that I don't need the drugs to fix my pain. And, you know, I've got my lovely counsellor and everything like that, and that's just who I turn to, sort of thing, and my teapots now.
Yeah, great.
Love my
But even
teapots.
acknowledging that you need help's a really massive thing for a lot of people, and that must have been, was that really difficult?
It was extremely difficult, but I guess there was only one way I was going to get that help, and that was asking for it, because for a lot of years, I had people kind of handing me the help on a silver platter, and I just told them where they could go and put it because I didn't need help and I didn't have a problem. But, you know, I had to be able to ask for that help and be able to, you know, say, yep, okay, I've got a problem, because if I didn't ever do that, there's no way that I'd be where I am now.
And you're a role model. Full-on headspace role model spokesperson. You're amazing. But really impressed, and it's been a privilege to hang out with you at the All Sorts group. I'm being mindful to make sure we try and cover everyone in the group. And Brittany, I wanted to just ask you, you know, we see families supporting people who are transitioning or managing their sexual identity or their life. What was it that made you feel so inclined to be such a rock-solid friend for Corey?
Acceptance. Accept whoever they are.
Yep.
Sorry, I was just crying before.
Yep. And did you get shit from people for supporting Corey? And if you're not feeling uncomfortable, that's cool. Is that too awkward? Do you want to chill out for a while and we can ask some other questions?
Sorry. Acceptance can be really difficult for those who don't have an open mind for things. I go into it because there are people out there who just need someone to be there for them. I try to be that person for Corey. Because if he doesn't have someone strong enough to be there for him, who's going to be there for him? I guess I'm not sure if it makes sense or anything, sorry.
Well, look, the fact that you're emotional shows how much you care. And if you weren't emotional, that would be problematic. So you've been a great friend, and I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, but keep doing what you're doing. And I guess the microphone's right near you, Adrian, and I wanted to, I guess, wrap up my observations of this documentary. Quite Caucasian, quite affluent, American. We know from some of the research that the experiences of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this country and the health outcomes are way poorer than a lot of other people in this country. Have you experienced any, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, as an Aboriginal identifying man who may be left out in the greater conversations, particularly in the LGBTI community, and some of the health and well-being outcomes that are frankly embarrassing? I don't know what I'm saying here. What can we do as agencies, as organisations, as people to support young LGBTIQ people who are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander? And I know you don't speak for everybody, but I know you have lots of great ideas.
I just need to think for a minute. It was very complex.
I know, it was about 5 questions.
Very complex question.
Yeah.
I think taking into consideration that some Indigenous, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander identifying individuals who are also within the LGBTIQ plus community. They're unable to access resources and help in their hometowns or wherever they reside. I think having more resources online for them would be more easier. Having things just like this, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a cinema, but it could be a seminar within a school to be quite informative and educational for people. Just like safe schools, just being able to educate the individual about who they are, and it's absolutely okay. For me personally, given that I come from an Indigenous family, my gay status was, it didn't tarnish who I was as a person, because at the end of the day, I'm still who I am. I just have extra vanilla in my coffee, and that's just who I am.
With your family different, do you think, or did you have support from community as well as your family?
Well, my family, because most Indigenous families are quite spiritual, but some are very religious, but my family was very spiritual. They were open-minded enough to look past this particular label and accept me for who I am. In regards to community, I think that's why I'm kind of with Headspace. I want to be able to further my horizons and be with my community more, because I felt like I've been quite introverted throughout my years, and I want to be able to give back. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was excellent, because I don't even know what I was saying then when I was asking those 5.5 questions.
It's okay, it's a long night.
Yeah, it has been a long day and a long night. Hey, Corey, do you feel comfortable with making some observations about that film? Was there anything that really struck a chord in that film that you were like, yes, that's part of my journey, or?
Well, he was going through his transition, and I saw that that's pretty much what I'm experiencing exactly, so I can relate in that way. Whereas I'm thinking in the next few years doing the surgery as well, but I've got to get my fear of hospitals out of the way.
You're not the only one.
But no, I'm quite comfortable at the pace I'm going, and I've got all my family support. I've got my best friends and my boyfriend as well. But no, I could see both sides of the story, how like it is a bit of a struggle for your family, a bit just to get over, like to accept it. But as long as you all come together and just be a real family and just do your best. It's
Great.
enough.
Yeah, I have some really close trans male friends, and they have this divide between wanting to just live their life as a man, and other times really feeling like they're being put under the microscope as an activist for trans people, and so that's a balancing act they find quite awkward. Have you contemplated about that, whether you feel comfortable being a spokesperson, or if you're just happy to be a person who quietly lives their life?
Oh, a bit of both. Like, I'm not big on the spotlight, but if I can have people come to me just one-on-one and I can answer questions, sort of thing. Whereas I don't feel being on the stage is my thing.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
not
can
all it's
answer
cracked up to be.
questions when I need to.
And it pays shit when it does pay. Have we got any last final questions or observations to any of this to this wonderful panel? Yeah, great. And then we can all go and get some yummy food.
I work in the industry of social work, about an hour and a half south. So I need to talk to ACON about some of the transgender support services down there. But I'm just wondering, because I'm working and Sherry knows this case, but working with a family that I've just found out about, a transgender 17-year-old going to a Christian school, so there's some challenges with that. But she said that Dad certainly isn't on board, but Mum's coming around. But are there any suggestions about how to talk to parents around what services that might be available here? We're not too far away, I suppose, but talking about how to engage them to learn about the journey, not only for themselves as parents, but also educating them about what might be relevant for their daughter that's going through wanting to transition as well. And I put it out to anybody who wants to answer that question.
It's a great question, and services are pretty stretched. And I know an organisation called PFLAG was very instrumental in the early days of supporting people, but that's changing.
That's actually a really great question, and it's a common question that a lot of parents go through. When a person transitions, their whole system transitions. Their friend transitions, their parents transition, their siblings transition, workplaces transition. So it's really important to have an open dialogue with all of those. When someone presents to me as the person who is with gender dysphoria, I say to them right from the start, if with your consent your parents want to join you in one of these sessions, please do. And I take the parents from where they're at. I understand, and I've actually developed some pathways in regards to this with the parents. I'm actually happy to talk to you in more detail about that. But I think we've got to understand that from a parent's, from a sibling's, from a workmate's point of view, while they're willing to be on board, they're also grieving and they're also suffering their own loss. And to not give them voice is to do the disservice to the actual person, because at the end of the day, they also need those people to be on board. Different parents will be at different times. So you mentioned going to a Christian school, so there's those spiritual beliefs that come in. I deal with that. Dr. Burson's here. We actually deal with these things together. I think the most important thing is to allow the parents to have a voice, be a good listener to them, and then offer them support like PFLAG, offer them support whether they want to talk to other parents. I am a clinical psychologist that I think outside the square of my profession with gender dysphoria. So one of the things working on the Gold Coast I found was that people were quite isolated. Once people came and saw me, and after quite an intense assessment process, when they started the transition, I asked them the question, would you like to meet other people who are also going through transition? And the answer is always, yes, I would. I then get them to sign special consent, and I allow them to introduce themselves to each other. This group has now become quite a big group. They go to cinemas together. Some of them are actually here. They offer support to each other. Some of them have been through surgery recently, so then they can talk to each other, get first-hand information. We need to expand the way we deal with this in a much more inclusive way, including parents. And that might include, and also I want to say, spouses, because I actually have couples who come and see me where the male transitions after several years of marriage and they have children. And that can be really confronting for the marriage. So we need to be able to give people a voice and have them connect with each other, support each other. How we do that in different communities, we have to think really widely. But with parents, I think it's really important to give them the opportunity to talk about their fears, talk about their losses, talk about what their expectations were, what are their strengths, come from a strength-based perspective as well. What are their strengths in dealing with this? But where do they need help?
I can see a Compass Fair Day shebang coming up.
To add to that, so our community legal centre is based in Lismore, so it sounds like you're probably near our way. I think that's a really good point, but the other side is not so nice, and there's probably a lot of discrimination in this person's future. Dealing with a Christian or a Catholic school is not easy at the best of times, so that's going to pose its own challenges. But I'd keep legal advice in the back of your mind, because there's ordinarily several forms of discrimination that come along the way, and you don't want that to be a barrier to either transitioning or to furthering those supportive conversations. So sometimes it's about getting some legal advice, getting a lawyer on board to go yell at somebody. I love yelling at people that are being real shits about this. So sometimes if somebody else can help with the fight so that the people going through it don't have to, that's sometimes beneficial.
Now, we have run out of time, and we've got, I think this cinema has to be used for a screening after this. I want to thank all our panellists. If you give them a round of applause, please. There's lots of resources outside. Claire Catoni, I think a round of applause for all the incredible organisation and time and effort you have put into this event. ACON has resources outside on the table. There are headspace resources. We produce a newsletter. There's already a kind of ad hoc network that's happening, so we can hopefully build that and create connection for our community and our families. So thanks for attending, and get home safely. Good night.